Welcome to the City Council special session this Tuesday evening, September 2nd. I now call this meeting to order. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Certainly, Mayor Newsom. Councilmember Diaz-Nash.
Present.
Councilmember Svrko-Goditsky.
Here.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Lorraine.
Here.
Mayor Newsom.
Here. Okay, sorry. We're excited to be here in person with options for those who choose not to be in person to participate virtually. There are several ways to participate. For those attending in person, complete a yellow request to speak slip and hand it to the clerk. If participating remotely, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom and you will be called on at the appropriate time. If calling in via phone, press *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until I close the public comment period for each specific item. We will begin tonight's special session with a study session item, City of San Mateo Strategic Plan Update, with a presentation from Zachary Reda, the Senior Management Analyst. Welcome.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Zach Reda, Senior Management Analyst in the City Manager's Office, and I'm here to gather feedback on the city's draft strategic plan. In this presentation, I will touch on the purpose and structure of the draft strategic plan, discuss new elements that can help the city successfully implement the plan, and then show you the new strategic planning and budget calendar. As we go through this, these are the questions staff would like feedback on. We want to know if the council has any adjustments to the process or the plan. So this strategic plan will have multiple purposes. It will offer a comprehensive framework for City Council to use when making decisions for both immediate and long-term priorities. It will allow the city to move in an intentional strategic direction over a longer time frame. It will act as a tool to implement planning documents already adopted by council in a systematic way. Sorry, I'm just having some technical difficulties here. I just need to scroll. My apologies. And all of these help the city use its resources with the utmost efficiency and impact with budget constraints in mind. Now, moving on to the structure in terms of the strategic plan. The mission statement is the guiding benchmark for city decisions and processes. The value statements are the guiding standards for all city decisions and processes. The strategic initiatives are the major categories reflecting the long-term concerns and interests of the city. The priority initiatives are the top 4 areas that will receive priority in both directional and financial decisions. The goals are high-level desired outcomes that guide the initiatives. And the SMART activities are approved and funded projects and programs that align with the strategic priorities developed by staff, though reflecting council interests and direction. Each one of these projects and programs will be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound so that staff can properly track and report on progress to the council and community. Also, staff will provide 2 status reports on all SMART activities every fiscal year for transparency and accountability. Here's a visual representation of the draft strategic plan's components. Near the top of the pyramid, you have more aspirational elements like the mission and values. Down near the base, you have the specific and actionable SMART activities. The council developed this mission statement at an offsite strategic plan public meeting in March. The mission of the City of San Mateo is to cultivate a vibrant, safe community through collaboration, innovation, and sustainability. Here are the 5 values discussed first by the council in March and then by the executive team in June. The values are the guiding standards for the city, and the intention is for each goal and SMART activity to hold these values central. 4 of these values, prosperity, inclusivity, diversity, and resiliency, are based off of the city's General Plan 2040 planning document. Integrity was not in that plan, but was added by the council in the March offsite meeting at the King Center. And I know this is clear for the council, but for everyone else tuning in for the first time tonight on this process, all 10 of these initiatives were identified as the key focus areas for the city. However, the priority initiatives, climate resiliency, transportation, infrastructure, and housing are the ones most sorely in need of additional resources at this time. Here is part 1 of an example of what the draft strategic plan looks like for infrastructure. The city manager's office held 10 meetings with executive team members and their staff to draft strategic initiative descriptors and goals for each initiative. Here you can see the initiative description in italics and the 3 infrastructure goals. The second goal reads, plan for the future of city infrastructure based on the changing needs of the community and with a focus on equity, accessibility, resiliency, and sustainability. This goal really focuses on innovation and sustainability. And the third goal, actively seek funding opportunities and partnerships, has a focus on collaboration. The idea is to have all goals reflect elements of the city's mission statement. And here's an example of a SMART activity for infrastructure. It reads, engage in construction work to address structural issues and accessibility at the Marina Library throughout 2025 and 2026, with completion targeted by February 2027. To break down what makes this activity SMART, it is specific in that there are structural and accessibility issues at the Marina Library. It's measurable because in February 2027, we can determine if we've accomplished what we set out to do. It's achievable because funding has been allocated and staff time is devoted to the project. It's relevant because the community loves its libraries and there's a great need for all the services our libraries provide. And lastly, it's time-bound because it has a specific completion target date. Also, the full list of SMART activities are not included in the draft strategic plan, but will be brought to the council in spring 2026 for feedback ahead of fiscal year 2026-27. Staff also propose a new blue sky process that will work more efficiently with the strategic planning process. The new blue sky meeting would include council affirmation of strategic initiatives and priority initiatives. At this annual meeting, the council can decide to change strategic initiatives or increase or decrease the importance of a specific initiative. Staff will provide a recommended list of new SMART activities based on long-range planning documents and organizational and community needs. These will serve as a starting point for council consideration. Also, the public would continue to have the chance to weigh in on future activities and priorities for the city and how they may impact the city budget. And lastly, council will be able to propose new SMART activities at this time. This gives the council an opportunity annually to add up to 3 new activities to the strategic plan for consideration. And the expectation is for the city council to bring all new activities to blue sky rather than be brought up during the reports and announcements section of city council meetings. Also, the recommendation is for council members to identify which activities are coming off the list or moving down in priority to accommodate the proposed new activity. Staff also recommends adding a few other elements to the strategic plan process. In addition to the SMART activities, staff will provide a high-level summary of each department's day-to-day core services. This will be helpful because it shows the work each department is doing in addition to the discretionary actions approved through the strategic plan. Secondly, to inform the City Council and community about how City Council agenda report items are furthering the completion of the strategic plan, staff recommends adding a new section on future agenda reports titled Strategic Plan Alignment. In this section, staff can explain how their item aligns with the implementation of the city's strategic plan. And to ensure the strategic plan is embedded in all city work and processes, staff developed a calendar that shows how the strategic planning process and annual budget process will work in tandem. It's very important that the budget process and the strategic planning process are aligned to ensure resources can be used effectively and efficiently. The draft strategic plan and the planning process will be brought back to the council. Next steps. The draft strategic plan and the planning process will be brought back to the council for formal adoption. Then the city manager's office, in coordination with the executive team, will develop SMART activities based on general plan goals, work plans, and the city council's priority list developed during the 2025 Blue Sky process. And the upcoming 2-year budget and the 2026 Blue Sky meeting will be guided by the strategic plan, and a finalized document that shows fiscal year 2026-27 SMART activities and core services will be brought to the council for feedback in spring 2026. This is my last slide, and I want to provide the questions for council one more time. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for a fantastic presentation. Before we move forward, do we have any requests for public comment?
Mayor Newsom, I have not received any requests to speak in chambers. If you wish to speak in this item and you'll participate in our virtual environment, please raise your hand now. I will give you just a moment to do so. Mayor Newsom, there are no requests to speak on this item.
Right, then we'll close public comment and open it up to questions, comments, and directions from my council colleagues. Does anyone? Please, Councilmember Diaz-Nash.
Thank you very much. And Zach and team, thank you so much for this. This document is so necessary and it's going to be so foundational. So great work. And please thank all the departments who I know are involved in this. Couple things, and I apologize to my council members. I've got a fair number of questions here, or comments. We talk about collaboration, innovation, and sustainability in the mission statement. And you've talked about how collaboration is woven throughout. How is innovation woven throughout?
My example in the presentation, let's see if I can pull up the slide here. It has, sorry. Basically, in all of the goals throughout the plan, we want to have innovation, sustainability, and collaboration as the foundational pieces in all of them. It may not touch every single one of those in every single one, but innovation is seen throughout all of our goals. And as we work towards achieving these goals, we'll need to be innovating because a lot of them are new projects that haven't been done before.
Okay. I mean, obviously that's what staff wants to do. I just suggest that as you further develop this document, I didn't see and feel a lot of innovation. And I know we're doing a lot of innovative things. So just keep that in mind as a filter. Then also in my prior lives, and I've done a lot of these strategic plans, in my mindset, this is supposed to be a public document, that we want everybody in the community to read it and understand it. And typically there's some type of an environmental overview and a SWOT analysis, strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I know that our general plan, we did a huge amount of environmental work as well as SWOT analysis. And I would just ask you, is there some way that some of that could be, in a very summary fashion, put into this document? Because if someone just comes off the street and reads it, they don't understand the context in which it's been developed. So just to take that under consideration.
Yeah. We, like you said, we leaned heavily on the general plan when we developed this document. And if that's the direction from the council, we can certainly add that.
Yeah. So that would be something I'd love to get feedback from my colleagues on. So one thing, or that many things have changed since March when we did this initially, but fiscal uncertainty, I think, has become much more of a front and center for us. And, we have to be very responsible about that. And that means fiscal responsibility to me needs to be called way up in priority. And it really isn't, it's throughout all this, but it isn't really called out. And we did not call it out ourselves as a real priority like some of the other priorities. And I know in the AR, it talked about how balance had been there. and staff recommended taking it out, and it looks like you've taken it out here already. I would suggest if you take balance out, which I agree with, adding fiscal responsibility in, because I think that's something we need to be held accountable for, as well as staff and our community together. So that's just sort of a general meta comment. So once again, I'd be looking for feedback from my council members.
So I'm happy to respond to that.
Sure.
Through the mayor. So on the fiscal sustainability, it is woven through this document, specifically under organizational health. I think there are some tweaks that we can make to really emphasize the point that you're trying to get across, Councilmember Diaz-Nash. Additionally, maybe there's something that we can look at from a fiscal sustainability standpoint to put into the values, because I think that really goes into everything that we're doing.
Yeah.
That could be a potential other option, but I'd want to hear from our entire council here
Sure.
a little.
If that's up to the mayor.
Through the mayor, can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure, please.
So in the values slide, it says cultivating a diverse and thriving economy. So I interpret that as fiscal responsibility.
You have to interpret it, but just saying, I guess my feeling is, and the council may disagree with me, that something like what the city manager has suggested might make some sense, just to underline the fact that with our own budget and what we're doing, not with what we do with the economy of the city, I'm focused on how we are fiscally responsible in our decisions. So.
And I totally appreciate that. I think that's a good point. But when I look at the SMART goals and the values, I think of it as a more holistic, broad picture. And yes, we're in a budget deficit today, but when you think about the long term of the city, that may not be the case.
I mean, this may not be the time for discussion. I think maybe.
Yeah.
So I can just quickly, but you do bring up a really valid point, Councilmember Cirko-Goditsky, that the activities, there's going to be a lot of the activities that align with our fiscal sustainability plan and approach that will capture during those said years. Because this is going to be an active living document that's going to change and evolve over time. And so in addition to, if you have it in the values, if you have it in the organizational health and good governance section, then you're going to have a whole list of a suite of activities that you'll be able to directly point to on the fiscal sustainability and our financial sustainability plan. And it's not just one item. We have our new finance director in the audience, but it'll be countless number of items that we're working on here.
Yeah.
And that's multi-year items.
And I think that makes all sorts of sense. I think your suggestion about maybe looking at the values might be, because whether it's a tight budget year or we're robust,
So is
fiscal responsibility should also be something we're focused on. So that's all. And similarly, more of a comment for as you expand this and how you develop the SMART activities. I know we, staff, the council, are trying very much to be community focused and service focused. And I'd love to see that come out more strongly in the wording as we go further with this document. Because I think that is certainly something we want to be. Then let's see. Okay. When you talk about the process for how we're going to implement this, and we wanted to, we want to change the blue sky and not have people be able to bring up, initiatives at reports and announcements. And I completely agree that we need to increase the discipline, and we can't just keep saying, let's add another one. Let's add I mean, that's just not feasible. But there are going to be times, number one, when we have to change, and we're going to have to change mid-cycle. And then number two, there are going to be things that maybe technology will allow us to be more efficient, so we can do more without any additional. So how do you see this plan reflecting that reality? Because the way it's described on your slide, it's okay, you get this one chance at the blue sky, and then you get no chances for the rest of the year. And I'm sure that's not what is envisioned.
I think it's the latter of your approach of that's not what is envisioned. Basically, once again, it's an active, living document. And so if the council gives direction, I hear a majority that you direct staff to move forward with an activity like you recently gave direction for the CWA. I'll go ahead and I will make sure that's in there, and then we can deprioritize the item that the council gives direction on to come off or push out in their smart activity goals for a later delivery date to make room for whatever new initiative that is. But typically, we'd like to see the council bring their items forward as part of the blue sky process, but understanding that, we live in a fast-paced society and things happen and come up. Given that type of flexibility, we can incorporate that. And where you'll see the reporting, there's 3 times a year actually 4 times a year where you will see these activities, and they might evolve depending on how things are going. It's going to be at your 2 report outs that you'll have, one in November, one in May. You'll also have the blue sky in February where you'll have a report out. And then technically with the budget adoption, this will be embedded in there as well. So those are all the different junctures and opportunities for us to be able to show updates to the activities portion. When we talk about actual strategic priorities, I would say we'd hold off until the February blue sky to really make those decisions if you want to exchange, one of the priority, one of the strategic priorities initiatives at that point in time, and deprioritize another one. Or you can add or remove them too from the list, add something new and take something off too. But that would, I'd say, hold for the February study session, try to practice that discipline.
Yeah, I would agree that that's absolutely what we want to try and do. I just want to make it clear that who knows what's going to happen. And there could be a time when COVID hits again or whatever, and we may have to make some fairly major shifts during the year. God forbid, I don't want that to be the case. I would love it to be just as you've explained it, but just so we understand that it is, that there could be some changes along the way.
And I've experienced that. I have the real world experience having to manage through that 5 years ago with a similar type of strategic plan. And it evolves, and it's flexible to be able to incorporate the changes
Great.
in real time.
Let's see. And I also like the recommendation to include the new section for future agenda items to tie it back to the strategic plan. The one problem with these documents is they go up on the shelf and we want them to be living and people to be aware of them. They aren't. So I think that's a really great addition. And then there's some minor verbiage that maybe I can just share with staff from a clarity perspective afterwards, rather than taking up time.
Just for the record, what are they exactly so that your fellow council members can hear them?
Oh yeah, I'm happy to do it all. I would recommend expanding the goal statement of the infrastructure section to meet the needs of all the members of the community. Whoops, and turn off my phone. Okay. And plan for our continued vibrancy as the city grows. Just to really talk about planning for our continued vibrancy as the city grows, as opposed to just focusing on what's here and now. Then the plan discusses seeking funding opportunities in the infrastructure section. I would recommend that should be a bullet in every relevant section. Everyone should always be looking for funding opportunities. Under transportation, I think somehow I would love to see in the final document that we acknowledge we're in a period of transition, because a number of the difficult discussions we're having regarding transportation have to do with, we want to get to a world where many more people are riding bicycles and walking and we're using public transit. We're not there yet. And some of the challenges are in that transition. So I think we need to acknowledge that, because that's going to take up, it is. If you look at what we're going to be discussing in our regular session, staff had to take a lot more time and community outreach to discuss what the community wanted. And that was the right thing to do. But it is a priority for staff. And under economic development, I would recommend adding and provides robust and predictable revenues to the end goal, the end of the first goal, which is attract and retain businesses, because you can attract and retain businesses, but we want to make sure we're attracting and retaining the right kind of businesses, not only to make our community happy, but to provide that kind of sustainable, predictable revenue. And as the smart activities under public safety are built out, I'm hopeful that there will be a real emphasis on the work that's being done on mental health, because that's such an important role for our community. And it's such a differentiator for our public safety staff. And we do so much innovative work, and there's innovation right there. And then under community engagement and communications, I would love to see a bullet about closing the loop to show impact and learning, not just we're out there talking. And another bullet about always giving the community a timely opportunity to provide feedback and see its impact. And the CRM system that's being implemented now, I think, is a great example. The public can come in, they can say what the problem is, they can see what their impact is. And I think that's just very important for community trust in what the city is doing. And just as a general piece of feedback as we go forward, I'd love to see more specific outreach to businesses, small and large, in showing up in our documents. We had some great feedback from some of our community leaders, faith leaders, people who aren't normally involved in this discussion or this process, which I think is wonderful. But I think we also need to make sure to have a very focused way of getting small and large businesses to input. But I think it's really a great document. I congratulate everybody involved, and I look forward to seeing it expand. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody want to go next or add to? Councilmember Swerkin-Kadicki.
Thank you. Zach, great presentation. I actually just wanted to bring something up more generally to the council, and Lisa actually alluded to it in her comments. I would really like to see this council execute and deliver. And I know we're doing a ton of great work, but this year in particular, we have shifted priorities quite a bit. I'm guilty of it too. And I just think if we're implementing a more structured approach with SMART goals, then we should all commit to, in the next blue sky, really sticking to whatever the priority setting is, so we can actually make sure city staff delivers. And again, I totally recognize things come up. We have to pivot. We have to be flexible, but we've had several pivots this year. So if we can just minimize that as a group. And then I'm on board with a lot of the comments Lisa made, so don't need to go too deep there. Could you just clarify what you were asking for in terms of SWOT analysis?
Sorry, my acronym brain. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So typically in a strategic plan, as part of the context setting, you share whatever the organization is, what the organization feels its strengths are, which may be our position in the community, it may be our mix of businesses, it may be our strong neighborhoods, whatever that happens to be. Then our weaknesses, the fact that we have not sufficiently invested in our long-term infrastructure could be a weakness. An opportunity could be the fact that we're sitting in the midst of the peninsula with so much happening both in San Francisco and San Jose and Silicon Valley. Maybe we want to take the opportunity to be the place where you come for X, or whatever that happens to be. And that then drives economic development. And then threats could be everything from sea level rise to, we have to be fiscally responsible, and we see less and less funding coming from other parts of the system. So we have to be aware of that in our planning. So it's just a way of putting that out there as a context that we then make our decisions about in terms of what our goals are, our strategies are, our programs and activities.
Yeah. I wonder though, going into blue sky for next year, if that's something the council can take on when we actually bring our priorities forward, that we do it from the kind of SWOT assessment landscape where we focus on goals that are, specific, that are looking at opportunity areas or threats, and bringing that, with specific justification.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, but I think you have to have an agreed, what's the foundation, right? That once
Sure.
we get that, then that's absolutely what I think staff is recommending, that we make sure we're
Sure.
geared toward that. So, but I know there's been a lot of work done in the general plan and many other documents. So I'm wondering if there's a way we could, yes, city manager.
Yeah. So you're exactly correct. The general plan, there was a SWOT analysis that was completed at the time. That was a few years ago when that had taken place, but that also is an area that we've brought into this development of the strategic plan and these initiatives. In addition to that, and if you recall, in February, we had a community satisfaction survey citywide that is statistically representative sample of our community. And in that gave us the prioritization and housing, transportation, infrastructure. Those were the top three areas really when you look at that. We also utilize that. That's what we brought to the table as well. So when you really want to see in real time or a recent time of just what, opportunities, threats, we can actually pull up and provide basically a synopsis of that community satisfaction survey result.
And I would totally agree that staff has already ingested all that and has come up with priorities and presented to council based on understanding the SWOT analysis. I'm just saying, if I'm a resident, I'm a newcomer to the city, I don't know all that, I don't know the community survey, I don't know all this. I see, oh, there's a strategic plan, this is really great. What's the context? So I'm just looking for like a one-page summary, not, the work's already been done.
Yeah, so we can compile that. That's something. If I'm seeing nodding heads on that, so we can go ahead and put a couple paragraphs together with that. Overall, lay the foundation for it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank
Okay. Thank you so much. Great presentation. That's it for me.
Thank you through the mayor. I appreciate the conversation we've had so far. Try not to repeat anything. I did want to ask a little more about the goal language and how it might contrast from goal language we have in the general plan. I'll just make a comment that when I looked at the transportation goals, for example, in the draft strategic plan here, I'll try to flip to it so that I remember what I'm talking about. Like the first bullet goal says work toward a transportation system that prioritizes user safety, accommodates future growth, and maintains efficient and safe operations for all users, which is fine. I just noticed that like the first goal in the circulation element of our general plan, I would expect to perhaps be broader. But to me, actually, I think was a bit more detailed. And so it says, for example, design and implement a multimodal transportation system that prioritizes walking, bicycling, and transit and is sustainable, safe, and accessible for all users, et cetera. So I guess I feel like I heard in your presentation that staff worked on these goals, likely leveraged the general plan goals as a starting point. But I mean, I guess maybe I just need to confirm that. Like my initial sort of question is like, could we mirror or leverage general plan goals where we can more throughout the document?
Yeah, so I think my response to that would be that the general plan is really looking out to 2040 in a lot of ways. And this is more, when we went through the goal setting process with staff, it was really within the next 5 years. What are these goals are kind of the high level buckets that we'll be putting these smart activities in under. And so we didn't want to be as broad because we were kind of looking at that 5-year time frame so that we could effectively put activities in that were achievable in that amount of time. Because like City Manager Kojikian has been saying, it's a flexible document. It's going to be changing. So we wanted to keep it at a shorter time frame than the general plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think I don't have any further questions at this time, given what's been said to date. I think I agree with, we've had some discussion about making sure that we are cognizant of the impact of what is brought forward in these reports and announcements with regard to new effective initiatives or activities rather. I agree that while there will be emergencies or situations that demand action in between these blue sky sessions, that in practice, it would be good to try harder to hew to the blue sky process for new activities, with the idea of ensuring that we can, in fact, implement what we already have on our plate, as an example. So I will be keeping that in mind. And I guess I will plant the seed that, to me, this seems like something that we may want to consider in a future edit to our rules and procedures, maybe just as a guideline. And again, not that we would always follow it, but rather that we keep it in mind. I
Just
guess
real quickly, I saw 2 nodding heads. Was there 3 for that? No.
Well, I was just noting that this seems, I was thinking of that when I read through the report, that more than just a recommendation from staff, really, I think to ensure that we keep it in mind more than just making a note from this one item, for example, and remembering that throughout, that we included in our rules and procedures as a guideline. And we just went through that process, but we are still working through this document. And so I think the timeline is fine. But to me, like, whether we talk, whether we agree to do so right this minute, I will make a note to bring it up the next time we talk about rules and procedures, either way.
Yes, that's what I was just trying, because we have a file that we keep all of your topics that you guys discuss about within the guidelines. And so just looking to see if you want us to add that as something for future discussion.
Are we suggesting that we wouldn't change any of our goals except for the 2 report outs per year as part of our rules and procedures? Is that what we're suggesting? Because I'm not.
No, this is just under trying to, and it's a guideline. Doesn't mean you have to follow, it's just something that you'd like to try to adhere to as best as possible, is to try to stick to the blue sky priority setting process for the most part, understanding that you might have to pivot from time to time, but trying to make that kind of the standard.
I'm okay with that. I mean, as long as we understand that we have to be flexible. I mean,
Absolutely.
A couple of years ago, we had flooding, and flooding wasn't even on our radar. And all of a sudden it became the thing we had to get done. And so we had COVID before that. So, I think, that's a great concept. And I think we should all do our best to try to adhere to it. And then I think we also have to recognize that sometimes we're going to have to call an audible and
Absolutely.
change. So
it just is something to,
I think it's
strive for.
But yes, I'm on board with that.
Okay, I see.
Bringing that back.
I see 4 nodding heads. So we'll just include that as just something to bring back when we have a future discussion.
Excellent. And then I guess just to Councilmember Diaz-Nash's comments related to fiscal sustainability, I guess I did feel like I saw in the value of prosperity a little bit of language, and even the organizational health and good governance initiative. But maybe we can add a little something to the integrity value. And perhaps there's something there that could include and, live within our means, or, I'm not sure. So I guess maybe rather than, that's just my initial thought, but maybe I'm okay with considering adding a bit of extra language to the values to that end. I like the idea of the one pager. I think we went over it. Thank you for that. That's a great idea, I think. And I think those are my comments. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you to all of you for your great comments and suggestions. I'm going to touch on a few that Councilmember Diaz-Nash has suggested. Um, when I think about collaboration, innovation, and sustainability, I feel like that should be covered under our SMART goals, particularly under measurable. And I think when we do this exercise of making a one pager and laying this out, that part of the measure, part of that yardstick should not only be if we get it done on time and on budget, but did we do the right amount of collaboration? Did we look for innovative solutions? And do we make sure that our solutions have sustainability built into them? I also think that when we think of fiscal responsibility, that while we could add that within some of the value or maybe as its own bullet point, again, I think that that should be something that's under our measurable goals. Did we have a budget and do we live within the budget? So I don't know how you all feel about that, but I'm okay with this in its form. However, I would like to make sure that we are putting those bullet points in, and they don't necessarily need to be top level, but that they're covered with each report. Or does that make sense?
I think if we put it as a value statement, I think that would be the all-encompassing, the umbrella, covering everything. If we try to get into the SMART goals, it kind of gets into the details. It makes it a lot more difficult for the report out. But on any of these, we're transparent. And so we can be very clear about, did we achieve this goal on time and on budget? But when we talk about the actual activity, not having to put the price tag in there, and did we make it by,
Right.
the
Yeah.
10% contingency factor and whatnot?
Yep. I just think, I'm totally on board with that.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we are, as when we finish something, that we go back and say, yeah, we were collaborative, and oh wow, we came up with this new idea. When I look at what we've had happen in the last 3 years, one of the things that kind of fell on our lap was that we have a partner with a drone company in San Mateo, and we now lead the way with kind of drone technology for cities on the peninsula. And I know that there could be other opportunities, like probably our CRM software is working towards AI solutions. And so while the goal for us is to get a CRM solution, I want to make sure that we're always looking at how we be innovative, how we use the companies, especially in our backyards, our actual companies in San Mateo, in San Mateo County, to make sure that we're being innovative and we're always keeping an eye on being flexible and looking ahead. So I think I rambled a little bit on that, but with that, I think everything you've presented is great, and I don't have anything else to add. Anyone else before we? Okay, well then we will go on to the next topic. Thank you so much. Next on the agenda is the Youth Commissioner to Senior Advisory Commission Ordinance Introduction. And we'll have a presentation from Zachary Silva from the Community Service Manager. Thank you. Wow, I am very red.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Zach Silva, and I'm the Community Services Manager for the Parks and Recreation Department and the Staff Liaison to the Senior Advisory Commission. And tonight I have a brief presentation on a proposed ordinance introduction. So on September 3rd of 2024, the council approved adding youth commissioners to the senior advisory or to the senior citizen commission. Later in December of that year, the commission's name was changed to the Senior Advisory Commission. However, during that administrative process, the provision for youth commissioners was inadvertently left out. So the ordinance before you corrects that and restores the council's original intent to add the youth commissioners. Since this was originally brought as an ordinance, council action is required on an ordinance to address the correction. The proposed ordinance would read, the two youth commissioners must be at least 13 years old and no more than 17 years old at the time of appointment. They must present written documentation of parental or guardian consent to be considered for appointment. Like other members of the commission, youth commissioners would serve at the pleasure of the council. The youth commissioners would not be members for purposes of the charter, but would instead serve as non-voting advisory members that would not count towards the quorum. Staff recommendation is as follows. Introduce an ordinance to amend the San Mateo Municipal Code, Chapter 2.23.010 to add two non-voting youth commissioners to the Senior Advisory Commission. And that concludes my brief presentation.
Thank you, Zachary. So do we have any public comment on this item?
Mayor Newsom, we have one request to speak in chambers, and we have no hands raised in our virtual environment, so we'll have
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Thank you.
Helen Wang will be our first and only speaker on this item.
I'm Ellen Wang, and I will not take 3 minutes. I speak for myself, even though you know that I am the chair now. Oh, can you hear me? I am the chair of the Senior Advisory Commission, but I speak for myself tonight. I am delighted that you are giving high schoolers the opportunity. I hope you are, I'm assuming, and that we've brought this to you. Delighted that you are giving high schoolers the opportunity to become civically engaged and get to know older adults, an experience that some, maybe many of them do not have. Likewise, senior advisory commissioners also get to know and listen to youth, an experience that some of us do not have on a regular basis. And we can hear fresh ideas. These benefits of that will not only affect 2 youth and 5 adults, the commissioners, but also be spread out to their friends, their families, their neighbors, whenever we're talking about the commission, which I know I do on a frequent basis. Other people will, the other seniors do, and the youth will. We'll talk about how they're civically engaged and how the city of San Mateo is important to them. And that concludes my 3 minutes.
Thank you. Mayor Newsom, that concludes public comment.
Okay, we'll close public comment and open it up. Do we have any questions, comments, or directions from council?
I move to accept this item.
Second.
Okay, can I just make one comment?
Yes.
Obviously, I know this was a clerical error somewhere, but I do want to make sure that we acknowledge that we had a clerical error and make sure that we have rev control in the future so that we don't have to bring stuff back in front of us for a little bit of verbiage. And I think that's already been addressed. So.
Noted, yes.
And I just also want to clarify that we will be keeping the 2. Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
no, this won't nullify any previous council direction on policy decisions.
Thank you. And with that, I will accept a call. Roll call.
Councilmember Fernandez,
Yes.
Councilmember Svirko-Goditsky,
Yes.
Councilmember Diaz-Nash,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Lorraine,
Yes.
Mayor Newsom.
Yes,
Motion carries 5-0.
thank you. And with that, we will close this special session and